If you ever hear someone whisper your name in the corridor of Queen's Haven Hospital, do not answer. They say the walls remember voices. They say the echo of a name is all a spirit needs to find its way back. The building stands still on the edge of Kowloon Bay, wrapped in fog that never lifts. The windows are clouded, the paint has peeled to bone, and the rain that touches its roof always carries a scent of smoke. As if the fire that ended it in 1999 still lingers somewhere beneath the floors. The city calls it Condemned, a place sealed by government order, awaiting demolition. But those who live nearby know it is something else. They call it the Waiting House, a place where the dead wait for someone to pick up the phone. No one goes near it after dusk. Taxi drivers avoid the road that bends past the gate. Construction workers cross themselves when the fog thickens. Even stray dogs turn back at its entrance, whining softly, tails tucked low. The story began with a sound that shouldn't exist. A telephone ringing through an empty corridor, faint, muffled, and distant. It had been years since the lines were cut, the electricity was gone, the room stripped bare. Yet that ringing continued, always from the same corner, near the nurses' station on the third floor. It came at midnight, always midnight. A journalist once went in to investigate, a man named Chan Wai-lin. He had written for the South China Post for 15 years and claimed he didn't believe in ghosts. He brought with him a flashlight, a recorder, and a crucifix he said belonged to his grandmother. He was found 3 hours later, unconscious near the stairwell. When he woke, he refused to speak about what he saw. He only said one thing. She kept asking for her son. When police checked his recorder, all they found was static. But beneath that static, faint and fractured, there was something else. A voice trembling, like breath scraping against the edge of the world. "Please, I need to call my son." The sound cut off with a long exhale, and the rest of the tape melted into silence. Since that night, the building has been watched. Security guards were hired, then replaced. Each lasted no more than a few weeks. One guard claimed he saw a wheelchair move down the hall by itself. Another said he heard footsteps behind him when he locked the gate, though the ground was wet and no prints were left. A third, the last one to quit, said he found a hospital phone on his desk one morning, though none existed in the office. It rang once and then stopped. They all left their posts before dawn. None returned for their final pay. The government sent demolition crews twice. Both attempts failed. First time, lightning struck the crane before it lifted the roof tiles. Second, a worker fell from the scaffolding after hearing someone call his name from below. There was no one there. The site has since been abandoned. But sometimes when the fog thickens and the moon hides behind the clouds, the faint flicker of a fluorescent light can be seen through the third-floor window, the same floor where the fire started. It's said that if you look too long, you'll see her. A woman in white standing at the end of the hall facing the wall, whispering into the receiver of a phone that no longer works. She does not move. She does not breathe. But her reflection can be seen in the glass, even when she isn't there. They call her the woman in the corridor. Some say she was a nurse who refused to leave her post the night of the fire. Others believe she was a patient, trapped in the oxygen ward when the flames spread. But those who have seen her, the few who still dare to speak of it, claim she doesn't appear burned or broken. She looks alive, her skin pale but unmarked, her eyes wide with a grief too human to belong to the dead. A caretaker once told a reporter that she tried speaking to the ghost. She said, "Miss, you can go home now." The woman only turned her head, smiled faintly and whispered, "Not yet." Then the caretaker heard the wheels move behind her, slow, creaking, and when she turned, the corridor was empty. Only the wheelchair remained, turned toward the payphone, waiting. There are those who insist the story is superstition, that the hospital's ghost is nothing more than mold and shadow. But those who have heard the phone ring, they know better. They say it sounds too real, too desperate. Not the echo of a ghost, but the memory of someone who hasn't realized she's already gone. And if you stand long enough near that corridor, if the rain begins to fall and the lights begin to dim, you might hear it too. The ringing, soft and steady, followed by a voice so faint it feels like it's inside your own head. Please, I need to call my son. Most who hear it turn away, but some, the curious, the foolish, the ones who don't believe, they answer. And once you answer, you cannot forget her voice, because she will remember yours. They say Queen's Haven was not always a hospital. Before the white walls rose, before the scent of antiseptic drowned the air, it was once an asylum, a colonial detention ward for the mad, the unwanted, the ones too inconvenient to keep alive. The basement still breathes with it. The iron staircase spirals down into stone damp with rust, where no light reaches and no echo ever returns. No one knows how many died there. Some records whispered that, after the war, their bodies were sealed in canvas and cast into the bay. But on foggy nights, fishermen still saw the bags drifting near the shore. The same symbol stamped faintly on the cloth, the mark of Queen's Haven. When peace came, the city wanted to erase what it had built. They renamed the site, raised 3 more floors, and turned it into a hospital. New paint over old bones. They hung a sign above the gate, where life begins again. But the foundation never forgot. The dead never forget. The first night it opened, nurses heard tapping beneath the tiles, a metallic rhythm against the pipes. The board dismissed it as rats. Yet the pattern was steady, deliberate, and when someone translated the code, it spelled 2 words: let me out. Weeks later, patients began to vanish from the psychiatric ward. No screams, no blood, locked doors, empty beds. A nurse swore she saw them walking through the corridor at midnight, moving slowly, eyes vacant, heading toward the basement stairs as if summoned. No one believed her until they found the photograph. It was taken during the night shift of 1974. 10 staff members lined up stiffly beneath the fluorescent lights. Behind them, in the window's reflection, was an 11th face, a woman with no uniform, hair unbound, eyes hollow as burnt paper. The photograph was lost in the fire years later, but the story stayed. The fire began in 1999. It started in the maternity ward. Official reports said faulty wiring, but a survivor swore she heard someone shout, "Don't touch the phone!" just before the lights went out. A young nurse ran toward the nursery. She never came back. When the fire crews broke through, they found the corridor charred black, the air thick with the smell of hair and burnt milk. Bodies lay scattered, but 2 were missing from the count: a patient named Ming Xu and a nurse named Li Mei. Li Mei was 27, no family, no next of kin. Before the fire, she'd been assigned to watch over Ming Xu, a mother who had delivered a stillborn child and had not spoken since. Every night, Ming Xu would whisper the same plea, "Please let me call my son." But the phone line to her ward had been cut weeks earlier. Still, she would rise, trembling, reach for the receiver, and press her ear to the silence. That night, when the alarms rang, Li Mei was seen running toward the phone booth. They said she was trying to make that call for the patient. The cables were already burning. When they found what was left, a melted receiver was fused into a woman's hand, too disfigured to tell if it was the nurse or the mother. After that, the phone kept ringing. Every night, same hour, One long, patient ring echoing through the empty corridor. Some believed it was Li Mei, still trying to finish her call. Others said it was Ming Xu, reaching across the flames for her son. But the living kept hearing it, and sometimes they answered. A year later, a city inspection team entered the ruins to prepare for demolition. In the basement, they found a door that wasn't on the blueprints, sealed with chains thick as wrists. Inside, a single metal table, a hanging lamp, and hundreds of yellowed scraps of paper taped to the walls. Each one bore the same uneven handwriting. "He won't answer. It keeps ringing. I can hear breathing on the other side. Him." No records match the writing. Not the nurses, not the patients, not anyone. The papers were collected for evidence, but by the next morning they were gone. Only the chains remained. A worker who moved the boxes of files later claimed someone stood behind him while he loaded the truck. He turned. Nothing there. But in the glass door of the operating room, he saw her reflection. A woman holding a telephone receiver, lips moving soundlessly. 3 weeks later, he drove his van through a guardrail and into the harbor. The police said he fell asleep. His wife said his phone had been ringing nonstop that night. Every time she answered, she heard breathing. Slow, damp, close. The tale spread quietly, then sank beneath the city's noise. Years passed. The hospital was sealed, declared unsafe, marked for demolition. But in 2016, a group of students broke in. They wanted to film a ghost challenge video, one of those late-night stunts that go viral for a week before vanishing. They brought flashlights, a camera, and an old rotary phone. They said if you dialed the right number, a woman would answer. The video never surfaced. The police found the broken camera 2 days later near the third-floor corridor. The last frame showed a hallway empty except for a single phone lying in the center, its cord dangling loose. No power, no connection. Yet the red indicator light glowed, steady, alive. After that, the city locked the gates for good. But those who live nearby still whisper about the nights when the wind carries the faint sound of a phone ringing through the fog, and how, if you follow it, it stops the moment you step inside. And sometimes, if you wait long enough, you'll hear a voice on the line, a woman's voice, asking if she can call her son. It began with a phone call, not the echoing, otherworldly kind that legends describe, but a simple, mundane ring, brittle, tired, like something pulled out of another century. The man who heard it was named Adrian Lau, a journalist for a small independent paper in Kowloon. He had been working on a feature about forgotten buildings, theaters, schools, sanatoriums, relics left behind as Hong Kong pressed itself upward into glass and neon. He was used to phone calls at odd hours, tips from janitors, caretakers, or superstitious guards. But this one was different. The number on the screen was 5 digits long. That format hadn't been used since the 1990s. He almost didn't pick up. When he finally did, there was nothing at first, just a sound, deep and slow, like breath drawn through water. Then a woman's voice, barely audible beneath the static. "Can you help me call my son?" Adrian froze. Her tone wasn't pleading. It was confused, as if she had repeated the same question for years and no longer remembered why. He tried to ask who she was, but the line cut. The display showed Queen's Haven Hospital, internal extension 303. But Queen's Haven had been abandoned for 16 years. He checked. The line didn't exist in any current database. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. By dawn, he had decided to go. The hospital lay on the far side of the island, where fog rolled in from the sea and the street lamps flickered weakly under the damp air. It took him nearly an hour to find the gate. Iron, chained, and half collapsed. The sign above it still read, Queen's Haven Hospital in fading English letters, half swallowed by rust. Inside, the building loomed like a carcass, glass shattered, corridors open to the wind. He moved through the entrance hall, recording notes. Every step echoed, the air heavy with dust and the faint metallic smell of water gone stagnant. He could almost hear the memory of footsteps. In the reception area, the old switchboard sat in one corner, its cables torn. The panel still bore faded labels. Ward A, maternity, basement, extension 303. He brushed the dust away. The bulb beside 303 was cracked, yet as he leaned closer, a faint red glow pulsed from beneath it, like a heartbeat refusing to die. He told himself it was a trick of the light, or some leftover charge from corroded wires. But the rational explanations felt small here. Too small. Further in, he found the corridor to the maternity wing, the place where the fire had started. The walls were black with soot, blistered with time. A broken wheelchair lay on its side in the middle of the hall, its wheels motionless but angled toward the nurse's station, as if waiting for someone to push it. He stepped past it carefully. His recorder picked up a faint clicking sound, like fingernails tapping against metal. He stopped. The sound stopped. Sound. He moved again. The sound followed. By the time he reached the ward doors, his breathing had gone shallow. He looked down the hallway, empty save for rows of beds covered in sheets gray as ash. Then from somewhere deeper came the soft tone of a phone ringing. It was distant but clear. One single ring, and then silence. Another, and another. Adrian followed the sound, past burnt doors and fallen beams, until he came to the old nurse's booth. There, half buried under debris, stood a desk with a rotary phone still attached to the wall. The cord was severed halfway, yet the receiver was moving, slowly swaying, as if someone had just put it down. He reached out. It rang again. The vibration thrummed through the air, deep and low, far louder than it should have been. He picked it up. Hello? Nothing. Then a whisper. Please, I need to call my son. Her voice was closer this time, clearer, as though she stood just behind him. Adrian turned sharply. The corridor stretched empty in both directions. The line hissed. He whispered back, Who are you? A pause, then, They cut the wires. I can't reach him. The phone went dead. When he lowered it, he saw the wheelchair had moved. It now stood at the edge of the hall, facing him directly. His camera light flickered. For a moment he thought he saw someone sitting in the chair. A shape, hunched, hands resting on its sides. But the next blink, it was gone. Adrian backed away, pulse racing, trying to tell himself it was exhaustion, imagination, whatever could keep him sane. He turned toward the exit, but the hall behind him no longer looked the same. The walls seemed to breathe, tiles buckled, groaning like ribs bending under weight. Somewhere in that shifting darkness, a woman's voice began to hum. It was low, toneless, almost mechanical, the rhythm of a lullaby sung by someone who had forgotten what words meant. Adrian felt the air grow cold around him. The light on the wall phone blinked again. 1 red pulse, 2, 3. Then he heard it, faint but undeniable. Another phone ringing far away, deeper below. He followed. The stairs to the basement were half collapsed, littered with bricks and soot. Each step echoed like metal striking bone. At the bottom, a door waited, warped with age, sealed with rust. Yet behind it, he could hear the ringing, steady and patient, as though someone were waiting for him to answer. He touched the handle. Cold seeped into his palm. And then, through the door, a whisper. Extension 303. Please hold. The line clicked open in his head, not through the phone, but through the space itself, vibrating in the air. For the first time, he understood what the stories meant. The call was not coming from the hospital. The hospital was the call. The basement smelled of rust and seawater. Every surface dripped. The air was thick, the kind that clings to the lungs like a slow infection. Adrian descended the final steps and stood before the sealed door. Its metal handle was crusted with salt, the color of old blood. He pressed his ear against it. Silence. Then faintly the sound of a phone ringing. Distant, steady, patient, like it had been ringing for years. 3 tones. Pause. 3 more. He tried the handle. It moved easily, too easily, as if something on the other side had been waiting. The room beyond was small, 6 paces wide, maybe 7. A single hanging bulb swung slowly overhead, its light pale and wet. And on every wall, as the stories had said, were scraps of paper. Hundreds, maybe thousands, yellowed, torn, the ink blurred by moisture and time. He raised his flashlight. Every page bore the same handwriting, jagged, frantic, looping back upon itself. He's not answering. The line keeps cutting. Please, just one more call. He moved closer. The papers fluttered as though they were breathing. The air tasted faintly of iron. In the center of the room stood a single metal table. Upon it lay a rotary phone, identical to the one upstairs, its cord trailing into the floor. No socket, no power. Yet the receiver trembled slightly, as if vibrating to some invisible current. Adrian's pulse slowed, then quickened again. He reached out, and the moment his fingers brushed the receiver, a sound crawled into the room. A woman's voice, faint but clear. "Don't hang up. Please, don't hang up again." He froze. The voice was not coming from the phone. It was everywhere. In the metal, the air, the papers breathing against the walls. He whispered, "Who are you?" A pause, then, softly, "I was supposed to make the call." The bulb flickered. For a heartbeat, the reflection in the steel table shifted. He saw a woman standing behind him. White uniform, hair half burnt, eyes ring black. When he turned, she was gone. The voice continued, calm now, almost resigned. "They said the wires were cut. They lied. The wires were never cut." Her tone changed, heavier. "They only stopped reaching the living." The bulb above him began to swing faster. The room seemed to inhale. The papers rustled louder, words smearing, letters dripping like wet ink reforming themselves. He backed toward the door, but the doorway had changed. The hall beyond was no longer the basement. Instead, he saw another corridor. Clean, white, sterile. Fluorescent lights hummed. An intercom buzzed overhead. Paging Nurse Lee May to the maternity ward. He blinked. His camera was gone. The flashlight dimmed. He stood suddenly in a hospital, alive and breathing. From somewhere down the hall came the cry of a newborn, then the alarm of a fire bell. Smoke rolled under the doors. He turned when and saw her, the nurse from the reflection, Lee May. Her face blistered, eyes glassy but aware. She was holding the phone receiver tight to her chest, mouthing words silently. Adrian stepped forward. She turned to him, tears cutting paths through the soot on her cheeks. "They won't let me call him," she said. "Who?" he asked. "My son." The walls pulsed. The alarms screamed louder. Fire spread along the floor, crawling like veins of light. Lee May held the receiver toward him. "Please, you can reach him. You're still alive." He hesitated. "What number?" Her mouth moved soundlessly. The words came out of the air instead, whispering from everywhere. 303. He grabbed the phone. It was cold. impossibly cold, like glass pulled from the ocean's floor. He pressed it to his ear, static. Then faintly, the same voice he had heard days ago, the same rhythm, the same sorrow. "Please, I need to call my son." The line began to distort, growing deeper, overlapping, as though hundreds of voices were speaking the same sentence together. The fire burned around him, but he felt no heat, only the weight of their words. He shouted, "Who are you?" And the chorus answered, "We called, and you answered." The receiver melted in his hand. The room split open like a wound, flame giving way to darkness. He fell, or thought he did. But there was no impact, only the sensation of being pulled backward through layers of time, through smoke and whisper and ringing phones. When the world steadied again, he was back in the basement, the bulb above him glowing steady once more. The papers had changed. They now bore his name. He stared at them, heart pounding. Each page was written in his own handwriting. "She called me. I went to find her. If you hear the phone, don't answer." He stumbled back, tripping over the chair, and the receiver hit the floor. It began to ring again. Ring, ring, ring. The sound filled the room, vibrating the walls, echoing in his skull. He ran, up the stairs, through the collapsing corridors, through the main hall. The sound followed, growing louder, closer, as if something behind him was dragging the ringing with it. He burst into the open air, choking, gasping, staring at the city lights beyond the hill. The phone stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then his pocket buzzed. He looked down. His phone screen was blank. No caller ID, just 5 numbers blinking softly. 30-3. He answered before he could stop himself. A voice whispered, "Thank you for calling Queen's Haven. Please hold." Then, the dial tone. Endless. He dropped the phone. It slid down the pavement, screen flickering once before going dark. He turned toward the hospital. In the broken window above the gate, he saw a figure standing. White uniform, still, watching. Her hand rose slowly, holding a receiver to her ear. And then, impossibly, the sound of a rotary dial began again. Slow, deliberate. Click, 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 3. Click. 0. 3. Rain began to fall. Thin, metallic rain, the kind that made the air smell like burnt copper. Adrian stood at the gate of Queen's Haven, soaked to the bone, trembling, not from cold, but from the knowledge that he had heard his own voice on the other end of the call. He told himself to leave, to get back to the city, to find light, people, anything that wasn't whispering his name through dead wires. But as he walked down the slope, his flashlight flickered once, then went out. The road ahead was gone, not dark, gone. No lights from the city below, no sound of traffic, only mist stretching infinitely in all directions. Behind him, the hospital stood untouched, windows unbroken, lights glowing faintly from within as if nothing had ever burned. He turned in a slow circle. The sound of the phone was gone, but in its place came something worse. The low hum of fluorescent lights, steady and mechanical. When he looked up, he realized the sky above him was tiled. White ceiling tiles. The rain wasn't rain at all. It was leaking water from a broken pipe. He was back inside. He stumbled backward, hands pressed against his head, muttering, No, I left. But the floor beneath his shoes was sterile vinyl. The faint echo of hospital machines pulsed through the air. The corridor before him was alive again. Nurses walking, patients murmuring. He caught the scent of antiseptic and blood, sharp and sweet. None of them looked at him. He tried to speak, to shout, but his voice made no sound. He reached out to touch one of them, an orderly wheeling a bed past. His fingers went through. He stepped back, dizzy. They weren't people. They were memories replaying themselves. And through their muffled voices, he could hear the same pattern, the same line whispered like a mantra. 303. He's still waiting. He turned toward the nurse's station. A phone sat there ringing softly. He approached, but something in him screamed, "Don't." Yet curiosity, that cruel twin of fear, pushed him forward. He picked up the receiver, static. Then his own voice said, "You're late." He froze. "Who is this?" "You should have answered sooner," the voice replied. Calm, detached, identical to his own tone. "What are you talking about?" The other him chuckled. "You've done this before. Don't you remember?" A flicker, a pulse through the lights. The hospital shifted again, subtly. The corridor stretched longer, walls bending inward. He pressed the receiver tighter. "Where am I?" "You're still in Queen's Haven," the voice said. "You never left. You think you came here to find a story, but you came here because you were called." He slammed the receiver down. It rang again instantly. He ran. Through the hall, through the operating theater, through the elevator shaft where cables hung like veins. Everywhere phones rang. Everywhere the same rhythm of numbers echoing off the walls. 303. He burst into a patient ward. Rows of beds stood empty except for one, the nearest. A shape lay beneath a thin sheet, motionless. He hesitated, then reached to pull it back. He saw himself, pale, still. A phone receiver resting on his chest. He stumbled backward, choking, his breath ragged. The lights overhead flickered violently, bathing the room in alternating blue and red. The air thickened, bending sound. He could feel it pressing into his ears, a deep vibration like heartbeat mixed with static. From the doorway, a voice spoke. Soft, steady, female. "You shouldn't have come back." He turned. Li Mei stood there, unburned, calm, her eyes clear this time. "What do you want from me?" he gasped. "Nothing," she said. "You already gave it." "Gave what?" "Your call." She gestured toward the body on the bed. "That's how it works. Every caller leaves something behind. A name, a memory, a soul. The hospital needs voices. It feeds on them." He shook his head violently. "This isn't real." She smiled, gently, almost sadly. "Reality isn't what decides if you stay. The call does." He took a step toward her. "Then tell me how to end it." "Answer." "I did." "No," she whispered. "You always answer. That's why you're still here." He looked around. The world began to warp again, edges softening, sounds looping, the same footsteps passing by over and over. He pressed his palms to his ears, trying to block the ringing. But now it came from inside his head, the sound of a rotary dial turning slowly. Click, click, click. 303. He screamed. The lights exploded, shards of glass falling like snow. When he looked again, Li Mei was gone. Only the phone remained on the bed beside his other self. It was still ringing. He grabbed it, lifted it to his ear. This time there was no voice, only breathing. Then faintly his own whisper from somewhere far away. "You'll wake up soon, but you'll still be here." The world snapped black. He opened his eyes. He was lying on the ground outside the hospital gates, dawn light creeping over the horizon. The building behind him was silent, gray, ordinary. His car was parked where he'd left it. For a long moment he sat there breathing hard, telling himself it was over, that he'd hallucinated everything, that trauma and exhaustion had spun the story. He stood, walked to his car, opened the door. His phone sat on the seat, dead battery. He plugged it in. The screen lit up. A single missed call. Number 3303. Time, 3:03 a.m. He stared at it, trembling, then slowly looked up. In the rearview mirror behind him, the hospital lights flickered once. Just once, like a final exhale. Then they went dark. He turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed, then died. Again. Nothing. And then, from the dashboard, came the faint sound of ringing. He looked closer. The sound wasn't coming from his phone. It was coming from the radio. He leaned forward. The static cleared, and a familiar voice, calm and distant, began to speak. "This is Queen's Haven Hospital. We are still receiving your call. Please hold." The radio clicked off. Silence again. But the reflection in the mirror had changed. In the driver's seat, just for an instant, he saw someone else. Pale skin, burned uniform, her hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, smiling. Then the image blinked out. Adrian stared at his own face in the mirror, expression hollow. He whispered, "I never left, did I?" No answer, only the faint echo of a dial tone lingering in the morning air, fading, but never ending. The fire began long before anyone saw smoke. Li Mei had been working her third consecutive night shift. The summer of 1999 had hung over Hong Kong like a fever. The air inside Queen's Haven was thick, damp, breathing against the skin. She remembered wiping her face with the corner of her sleeve, staring at the clock above the nurse's station. 2 a.m. again. It had been 2 a.m. for an hour. She thought the clock was broken. She didn't know that time itself had already stalled. The first sound wasn't an alarm. It was a whisper under the floor. A hiss, almost polite, as oxygen met the first flicker of flame in the electrical room. Then came the smell. Plastic, dust, burnt linen. She rose, walked toward the corridor, and saw it. Light where there should have been dark, orange trembling behind the glass door of Ward C. She ran. Inside, an old man was coughing, clawing at his bed sheets. She tried to pull him free, but the air was already alive with sparks. The fire didn't spread normally. It crawled, deliberate, thin streams of light tracing the ceiling like veins. The sprinklers failed. The intercom spat static. She pressed the emergency button. Silence then, faintly, through the distortion, a voice she didn't recognize. "Ward 303, can you hear me?" She froze. 303 was the empty ward, sealed for renovation. "Who is this?" she shouted into the intercom. "Keep the line open," the voice said. "Do not hang up." The man on the bed screamed. His sheet caught flame. She tore it away, dragged him toward the door, her lungs raw from the smoke. But as she reached the corridor, the shape of the hospital shifted. Doors multiplying, walls closing like lungs. Every direction led back to the same hall. The voice returned, closer now, slipping through the speakers above her head. "Stay where you are. Help is coming." "Send them now," she cried. "I'm here," it said. The phone on the wall began to ring. She hesitated. The receiver was melting at the edges, but still intact. She picked it up. "Who are you?" she gasped, static. Then her own voice answered back. "Li Mei, don't hang up." The air convulsed. The corridor burned white. She dropped the phone and ran. By the time the firefighters arrived, half the building was gone. They found her body near the nurse's station, still clutching a receiver melted into her palm. The line had been dead for years, disconnected during renovation. No one could explain why the call log printed one outgoing number at exactly 3:03 a.m. After her death, rumors spread. Patients who survived the fire said they heard a woman's voice guiding them through the smoke, telling them which stairwell was clear. Every one of those who followed the voice escaped. Everyone who ignored it died. The city moved on. The hospital was condemned, rebuilt, abandoned again. But at 3:03 a.m., Residents nearby claimed to hear phones ringing through the fog, and somewhere within the ruin, Lee May still walked the halls. Not entirely ghost, not entirely human. A pulse of memory caught between two states of burning. At first, she tried to leave. She would walk to the entrance, push through the glass, and find herself stepping out into the same corridor again. The world outside existed only in fragments. The faint smell of sea wind, the flicker of neon from Causeway Bay, the memory of rain. But when she tried to hold on, it dissolved. Each night, the hospital rewound. The fire returned. The whispers began. The old man coughed, and the voice from 303 called her back. One night, she decided to answer. The line was clearer this time. A man's voice, tired, distant, speaking in English. "Hello? Anyone there?" She didn't know the year, didn't know how long she'd been looping, but she knew this voice wasn't from her time. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm a journalist," he said. "I'm outside Queen's Haven. I heard your name." Her heart stuttered. "What name?" "Lee May. They said you tried to call someone before the fire." "I'm investigating." She realized then that she wasn't hearing him through the phone. She was inside the phone, her thoughts vibrating through dead wires. "You shouldn't have come here," she said. "Why?" "Because once you answer, you can't stop the line." He didn't listen. They never did. Night after night, new voices found her. Explorers, thieves, thrill seekers, all drawn by the myth of the ringing phones. Each conversation started the same way. Curiosity, disbelief, then fear. And every time when they hung up, she felt a piece of them fall through the signal and into the hospital, trapped in the static with her. The place fed on that. It grew. Some nights she walked past rooms that hadn't existed before. Endless rows of phones, each connected to a different world, each ringing faintly. When she passed, she could hear the same words whispering through every receiver. "Queen's Haven Hospital. Please hold." That was when she understood. The fire hadn't killed her. It had recorded her. She was the switchboard now, the voice that connected the living and the dead. Still, deep inside her scorched chest, something human remained. A single thought replaying endlessly. My son. He had been 6 when she died. Every time the loop began again, she searched for a way to reach him. That was why she begged to make a call. That was why the phone still rang. But the hospital had twisted the wish. It didn't let her reach her child. It made her reach a stranger's. Anyone who would listen, anyone who would answer. Because in that instant of connection, it could feed. And when the journalist named Adrian arrived years later, she recognized the pattern. The same question, the same voice, the next link in the chain. She wanted to warn him, but she no longer had control over the words that came out of her mouth. The hospital spoke through her now. She could only echo the script. "I just need to call my son. Please, just one call." And when he picked up, when he stayed on the line too long, she felt his presence seep into the static. Another voice added to the chorus. Now, as she walks the corridors, in that endless replay of fire and sirens, she sometimes hears footsteps that aren't hers. A man's voice murmuring, 303. She almost smiles. "You stayed," she whispers. "You understand." Together they wander through the ash, two echoes caught in the same frequency, calling out to the living. And outside in the waking world at 3:03 a.m., a phone somewhere begins to ring. Someone, somewhere will pick it up, and Queen's Haven will breathe again. It began quietly, a single report in a local forum, a man claiming his landline had rung at 3:03 a.m. The line filled with faint hospital sounds, distant footsteps, a wheeled gurney squeaking across tile, the soft rhythm of a woman breathing through static. He lived miles from Queen's Haven. He didn't even have caller ID service. The story should have ended there. But the next week, 3 more people posted about the same thing. Then 10, then hundreds. At first, it was easy to dismiss. Hoaxes, urban myths, viral marketing for some horror film. Hong Kong was full of stories like that. Restless spirits in high-rise elevators, ghosts in public bathrooms, the woman in red who hailed taxis and vanished at tunnels. The city thrived on superstition. But this one felt different, because everyone who received the call reported the same number, 33. And every one of them heard the same sentence, whispered in Cantonese before the line went dead. Please, just one call. When journalists investigated, they found something stranger still, that none of those landlines had ever been capable of making or receiving international calls, yet the signals were being routed through obsolete hospital exchange codes discontinued in 1999, and the exchange tag matched the one registered to Queen's Haven Hospital. By then, the building had been sealed for nearly 2 decades. The demolition order, delayed year after year, sat buried under bureaucratic dust. But after the first wave of reports, officials dispatched a small maintenance team to check for illegal wiring or squatters. They entered on a humid August morning. 4 men, 1 technician, 1 camera. Only the camera came back. The footage leaked 2 months later. A shaky, grainy recording that looked too real to fake. It showed the men walking through the empty wards, joking nervously. Then, without warning, the overhead lights flickered to life, though the power generator was disconnected. One of them pointed his torch toward the nurse's station. The phone there, yellowed, cracked, began to ring. A label beneath it read, Ward 303. They argued about answering. Someone lifted the receiver. The moment he did, the video warped. Sound stretched, colors bleeding, the timestamp freezing at 03303. In the final frame, the camera tilted toward the corridor. A figure stood at the far end, white uniform, black hair, motionless. No one ever found the men. After that, the government sealed the building again, this time welding the gates shut, but it was too late. The frequency had escaped. People living near the harbor claim that, late at night, the sound of phones ringing drifted through the mist. Hundreds of them, faint and far away. Boats crossing Victoria Harbor reported radio interference, ghost calls that cut through maritime channels, always the same tone. This is Queen's Haven Hospital. Please hold. Tech forums lit up with threads about the 303 wave. Audio engineers tried to trace its source, feeding the recordings through filters, spectrum analysis, phase inversion. One claimed that if you slowed the ringtone to 1/10 speed, you could hear voices beneath it. The layered echoes of multiple people breathing, whispering, gasping for air. He posted the file. A week later, his account vanished, and so did he. After that, no one tried to isolate the sound again. There was something about the way the tone replicated. Phones would ring in unison across entire buildings, even when disconnected from power. Security cameras showed nothing, except faint reflections, shadows that flickered along glass surfaces a few seconds before the ring began. It was as if the city itself were becoming an extension of the hospital, its veins of cable and fiber carrying not data, but memory. By late autumn, Queen's Haven had become a forbidden name. Taxi drivers refused to take the route near its hill. Locals burned incense at every corner where the signal was strongest. Children were warned, if the phone rings at 303, never answer. But warnings have a way of drawing attention. Amateur ghost hunters, live streamers, skeptics. They came in waves, armed with cameras and arrogance. Every few weeks, someone new disappeared. And still the calls spread. It wasn't long before mobile phones were affected. Not all, only a few, chosen at random. Those who answered reported the same experience: a soft breathing on the other end, a woman's voice asking in perfect calm, "May I call my son?" If they hung up, nothing happened. But if they stayed silent, if they listened, something began to happen to the recording on their device. The call log disappeared, the battery drained, and afterward, their phone would occasionally ring with no number. Just a black screen, frozen at 3:03 a.m. Some said they started hearing the tone even when the phone was off. A rhythmic pattern, 3 beats, pause, 3 beats, echoing faintly inside their walls, their dreams, their lungs. No one knew why it chose certain people. Some thought it followed grief, others guilt. But a few survivors, rare, fragmented testimonies uploaded and deleted within hours, described something eerily consistent. They all said that, moments before the call, they felt watched, not by something evil, but by something waiting, as though the hospital itself was calling out for someone who could understand. In one video that surfaced briefly before being scrubbed, a middle-aged woman sat in her apartment, trembling. She had answered the call 2 nights earlier. Her eyes were distant, glassy. Behind her, a faint ringing could be heard. "I think she found her son," she said softly. The interviewer asked, "Who?" The woman smiled. "Me." The screen cut to static. By then, even the skeptics had gone quiet. The telecommunications office issued a statement denying the existence of any 3303 anomaly. But people noticed their release time, 3:03 p.m., exactly 12 hours apart from the phenomenon. Every clock ticked in unison that day, then glitched for a second, a subtle sync no one could explain. Now, as the city sleeps, sometimes the night feels heavier. Sometimes through the walls, through the hum of fluorescent lights, a faint ringing pulses. Old copper lines buried beneath the streets still carry a ghost current, whispering through solder and dust. And if you listen closely enough, past the static, past the hum, you might catch the faintest trace of a voice, the sound of a woman exhaling your name. Please, just one call, then silence, until tomorrow night, when it rings again. There is a strange silence that follows a story like this, the kind that hums between heartbeats, like a wire still alive even after the power's been cut. You think it's over. You think it was only a story. But stories, like signals, do not die. They drift, searching for a receiver. It was said that after the last broadcast of Queenshaven Hospital aired on a late-night radio station, the studio phone began to ring. The producer thought it was a prank. He muted the line. Still, the sound came through, faint, rhythmic, weaving itself into the static of the airwaves. The transmitter caught it, and from that night onward, every device tuned to the same frequency began to echo it back. No one knows who answered first. Some said it was the host, a man whose voice carried calm and sorrow in equal measure. He told the story as a warning, as a way of putting ghosts to rest. But near the end of his final episode, he hesitated just once, as though hearing something in his earpiece. Listeners noticed the change. His words slowed. His tone softened, almost like someone whispering along with him. "There's a call waiting," he said. "Do you hear it?" They thought it was a script, but the silence that followed wasn't written. You could hear the sound of a chair shifting, the faint intake of breath, and then a ring. One tone, then another. 3. Pause. 3. The audio cut off mid-breath. When the station checked the logs, the call originated from 3303. The timestamp read 3:03 a.m. No one ever heard from him again, but those who replayed the recording noticed something subtle. If you slowed the tape beneath his final words, Buried under static, you could hear another voice, female, soft, steady, whispering in unison. Please, just one call. And when you listened even closer, beneath her, there was a third voice, yours, because you were listening, because sound is invitation, because hearing is answering. There is a rumor now that Queen's Haven no longer exists in any physical sense. The building was demolished, the hill cleared, the foundations buried under a new residential complex. But those who move there speak of nights when the air thickens, when the elevators stop at the third floor, even if no one presses the button, when the intercom clicks on by itself at exactly 3:03 a.m. A voice, calm and polite, asks, "Is your line still open?" Some residents leave, some pray, and some, unable to resist, reply softly, "Yes." Those who do never sleep soundly again. They say they hear breathing through the walls. They say that sometimes when they dream, they wake to find themselves standing in a corridor filled with smoke, alarms silent, phones ringing endlessly down the hall. And at the far end, always the far end, a woman waits beside a wheelchair that moves on its own, her face half shadowed by flickering light. If they try to speak, she holds up a finger, not to silence, but to listen, because someone is always calling. No one knows how many are part of the network now. It grows quietly, through stories told and retold. Every repetition opens another line, every whisper another signal. Somewhere a writer types the words. Somewhere else a voice reads them aloud. Each syllable carries a pulse, like a heartbeat sent through the dark. You might think you are safe because you are only reading. But sound is not the only way a signal travels. Sometimes it rides inside memory. Sometimes it hides in the pause between breaths. Sometimes it waits inside silence itself until you remember the name. And once you remember, it remembers you back. Tonight, somewhere in the city, a light flickers in an empty hospital room. Dust drifts in the still air. A wheelchair creaks forward a few inches, stops, then turns on its own, facing the wall where a faint reflection trembles. The shadow of a woman who is no longer there. The phone on the counter begins to ring, not loud, not sharp, just steady. 3 tones, pause, 3 more. The air trembles as if listening. And then, for the briefest moment, the world forgets which side of the line it's on. They say if you hear that ring, faint, distant, impossible, you must never answer. But the truth is, you already have. The moment you followed this story to the end, the line opened. You connected, you heard her name, you imagined the corridor, the smoke, the reflection, the whisper. That was enough. Because Queen's Haven does not need your voice, only your attention. Now that it has it, it will wait, patiently. And one night, maybe not tonight, maybe years from now, your phone will ring once at 3:03 a.m. When you wake, half dreaming, and reach for it, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember the silence, and you'll wonder if you're still alone. When you press the receiver to your ear, you'll hear breathing. Then a voice, gentle as sleep, will ask, "May I call my son?" If you answer, she will thank you. If you stay silent, she will wait. Either way, the call will continue. Because Queen's Haven is not a place, it's a connection. It exists wherever grief and memory overlap, where someone waits for a call that will never come. And when it ends, when the tone fades and the night goes still, you'll tell yourself it was only a dream. But deep inside the wire, the line will remain open. The current will hum softly eternally. Somewhere a voice, yours, hers, ours, will whisper into the static, "This is Queen's Haven Hospital. We are still receiving your call. Please hold."